Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the 199 podcast. Tonight or this evening, we're going to be diving into history. We have Yo Pops and Multi here. Yo Pops is here for diversity reasons, and Multi, his descendancy, his legacy, his ancestors are all very, very important. We're going to get to some shocking revelations. He's got a lot to talk about, so it's going to be a fun stream, guys. But we're gonna start off a couple of hundred years ago, right after Plymouth Rock was founded, with the mayor. We've got echo from someone. With the mayor of Plymouth, John Carver, who is Multi's great 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 ancestor. And Multi, tell us about him.
Well, going back even further before the Pilgrims came over, I'm
Oh
directly
shoot,
descended
sorry,
from.
Lady Medea says she can't hear me. Guys, can you hear us? Just want to confirm. Let us know in chat if you can hear us. Okay, yeah, it's coming through fine on my phone. Okay, go ahead, Multi.
Yeah, so before that, before they sent the Pilgrims over, King Edward the First is actually when they were the Westmorlands, that's who I'm directly descended from. And then once they came over and landed on Plymouth Rock, the first mayor of Plymouth Rock was John Carver. And he was only alive and in office for 2 months, but that starts my descendancy. So there's one part of it.
So one part of it. And then the next part I feel of relevance is the McCoys, right? You're directly descended from the McCoys.
Yeah, that's on my mom's side. So the
Mm-hmm.
Carver side is on my dad's side. So
Mm-hmm.
that one goes straight back to England, what the 1600s, whatever. But yeah, on my mom's side, that's where the Scotch Irish, the Hatfields and McCoys. I'm a McCoy, and also ended up marrying into the Sullivans from Sullivan's Hollow, which basically they were the redneck gangsters of the Deep South.
Deep
It was
South.
yeah, it was one of those things where it was just like you don't go into their territory, you don't mess with them, and they keep their women pretty. That was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like one of their little things. Like they held them in high regard and no outsiders. So it was a little racist.
So yeah, I've heard some stuff, or some rumors or theories about the McCoys and having a bunch of like incest going on. Do you know anything if that's like accurate or if that's just like hearsay?
To my knowledge, I have no clue, but Jeremy can attest to that. If I'm sure he's one of those ones. He's got a bulb off the side of his head, so.
Okay. So moving on from the McCoys, getting a little bit closer to current events. There's someone who there was a book written about, someone pretty important in history. This old guy named Uncle Tom. He was someone's uncle, and he was, living out in a cabin. And there's stories, there's movies. There's a lot of history, a lot of lore that goes into Uncle Tom's cabin and the fictional story, which was derived from truth. A lot of truth, what truth went into the story of Uncle Tom's cabin. And oh shoot, guys, we just lost Malty. Um, Shoot, that is the worst timing possible. Yo Pops, say something. Tell us about. So actually, guys, Yo Pops, in the 1980s, his family moved over from Korea to America. What do you have to say about that, Yo Pops, while I try and figure out what happened to Multi?
It's I don't know. It's really not much to say. They just came over here because they had an opportunity to immigrate over here. I believe it was my grandma's side had a brother that lived in Philly, and through that they were able to immigrate over from Korea. It was just certain circumstances that happened over in the mainland caused them to come over here, but it's nothing really, nothing really much to tell. It's just they came over, and then I believe they my grandparents did some odd jobs here and there. Then my grandpa opened up a little like liquor store over in L.A., and he ran that for a while, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. My parents came, I think, like a year after my grandparents came over, and then yeah, and I think I was born like shortly after, and that was it. It's nothing.
Nice.
It's not like Maltese story where he it goes back to like generations in America, and he has all these interesting stories. So
Speaking of interesting stories, Malty is back. He was sabotaged by Uncle Tom's ancestor, who's trying to get some revenge. But Malty is here to tell us. Malty is directly descended from, I'll let him say it, but someone very special and very important and relevant to the Uncle Tom story. I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, so the book by Harriet Beecher Stowe is actually written about a real life thing, but they changed the names. It wasn't actually Simon Legree. The actual slave owner's name was Robert McAlpin, and his wife, Lillian McGee, is who I'm directly descended from. So that bloodline goes straight down from there.
So Malty is directly descended from the headmaster, the leader of the masters, who was in the story Uncle Tom. And there's some legacy there. Like there's some importance there, and especially with thinking about blood and legacy passing on through descendancy. Uh, do you have anything to share about that with the legacy passing on through your relation?
I don't know what legacy because we all make our own choices in life.
Exactly.
No, it's a part of my past. It's part of the history. Nothing I had anything to do with, and definitely not something that I'm going to continue carrying on. But we can make jokes about it all day.
Obviously. Um, But so, what do you know? Is there anything that history doesn't tell us? Anything that with your family connection that you know about your what is it great 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 grandfather?
So Lillian was my great great grandmother, my dad's great grandmother. I had to make sure that I had the great greats right. And then they married into the Cap side, which is a lot of where, well, I have Indian ancestry on both sides, but that's kind of where it starts as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, Malty, I had a quick question regarding the Indian ancestry. How common was it for like the settlers to have what's what I'm looking for, either like gotten married or with the natives? Like, how common was that?
Well, by that point, once America was established, and so it was a whole lot of assimilation, so it wasn't uncommon at all at that
Okay.
point. It's not like which I know John Rolfe and Pocahontas, not John Smith, but like the actual one was John Rolfe and Pocahontas. That was almost forbidden. That was like forbidden love. But by the time we got to slavery and, people were building railroads and everything was industrializing, that wasn't uncommon at all.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
everyone should probably take into account that the native tribes, that's exactly what they were. They were tribes. They weren't like the United States of America. They weren't like that. They weren't all like a union.
That's right.
Everyone did what they wanted to and what their tribes did. So some partner with the French during the French Indian War, some partnered with us during the Revolutionary War, during the War of 1812.
Hmm.
Different tribes did whatever the heck they wanted to do.
Yeah, no,
So they
some of
were
them.
all independently thinking.
Yeah, no, and some of them were also with the British as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah, you're not wrong about that. Going back to Revolutionary, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, on both sides.
And
I don't
chat, if you
want
have
to
any
talk out of
questions
pocket,
from
but
if you have any
sorry, go ahead.
questions for Malty, just send them in about any of that with the McCoys or the governor or Uncle Tom's master. Any questions at all? Just gonna address chat super fast because Jessica first, Lady Media's second. Uh, hey Andrew. Evening Kaijin. How about Kaijin? I'm gonna say Corey. Corey's easy.
It's Cajun, Cajun,
Yeah,
Cajun
don't
Cajun.
Corey.
worry.
Cajun. Sup guys? Sup Ronan?
What's up, Ronan?
Okay. So moving back towards the Uncle Tom era, what year do you know what year your ancestor was born in and when he died or how long he lived for?
I'm not sure on that because my ancestor was the wife of Robert
Mm-hmm.
McAlpin, who was the slave
Mm,
owner.
oh,
Mm-hmm. What about their kids? Do you know how many kids they had?
Honestly, I didn't do that much research. Just you find the bloodlines of people who pop up in history, and it's like, oh my goodness. Okay, well that's something that happened.
And what was her name again? His wife,
Lillian McGee,
Lillian McGee. And what was his name?
Robert McAlpin.
So Robert McCulkin and Lillian McGee, slave owners, Uncle Thomas stuff was based off them. Um,
Yeah, he was actually a preacher too.
he was a preacher
Mm,
too, which is, that was a pretty high position back then. I mean, it still is
yeah.
now, but there was a bit of almost like majesty respect that comes with, being a preacher, and a great deal of influence as well, influence over like the town or the village, and
Yeah,
influence around
exactly.
decision making.
And to try to teach people to follow Jesus while at the same time you're like one of the worst ones that actually beat their slaves and everything. That's just hypocrisy. He's burning in hell.
Hmm. Do you know
So
what type of? Oh, go ahead, Joe Pops.
oh, I was just wondering what's the lineage of the name McGee, or what's where did that name come from? Is that I no no is that British,
It's Scotch
Irish, or
Irish.
Scotch Irish? Okay.
Yeah, and that's somewhere along the line. I mean, obviously, it's been so many generations and so many years. Like you don't know exactly where they come from, but it's
Mhm.
just the famous ones. There's Sullivan's Hollow. It's a great book. It's basically, I think I've already said it, but kind of like the mobsters
Mm.
before anything was actually industrialized and anything, just like the backwoods, the moonshiners. It's
Okay.
kind of that kind of thing. And there's a book, it's called Sullivan's Hollow, where you could find that. And then you have the Hatfields and McCoys started out around Tennessee, and they just kind of interbreed, and bloodlines get popped down. So,
So, do you know what type of plantation Lillian and her husband owned, and how many slaves they had under them?
yeah, oh, I don't know how many slaves, but it's right under Natchitoches, Louisiana, which is spelled Natchitoches, but it's pronounced Natchitoches. And
Negative.
it's been renamed to the Eva Plantation, and that was the place where all that took place.
Have you visited it since?
I have not. I've only gone to Magnolia, which is a little south of it's a little south of Natchitoches, but it's not as far down south as Eva is.
Do you know what was the plantation like a cotton plantation, or what was produced there?
That was cotton. Yeah,
It was cotton.
mostly
Okay,
cotton.
that can be expected. Um,
And if you still go out there to this day, you can see a lot of old factories that are cotton gins, and they just
mhm.
leave them standing. They're national landmarks now, but
Mm,
they just
nice.
left them there, and they're giant. So you know that like they were doing heavy production back in the day.
Mhm. And so, do you know with your ancestors? Do you know if there was any involvement with the Civil War, the Confederacy?
Yeah, I couldn't give you names, but I know that most of us, that came out the wrong way, but most of my people, that comes out wrong too.
Yeah, it doesn't
They were
matter.
all
Just
on the
say it, man.
Confederate side.
Okay,
Most of the people that I come from, like, they are almost all Confederate soldiers.
one of my grandfathers was a Confederate war general, which was pretty exciting. And then
Mm.
another one of my ancestors, I've got a picture of him and Kennedy together, which is neat. Not the Confederate war general, but his descendants. Um, so I guess here most people, I guess on the 199 are related to Confederate war generals, or not war generals, but officers in the Confederate Army. I assume your descendants. I assume they were like officers, not just like base level soldiers. We can at least say they were, you know,
And there was somewhere up there,
somewhere
and a
up there,
couple of grunts. You
hierarchy.
never.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, hail the Confederacy, and that's a whole nother thing to dive into. Is the Confederates weren't just flat fighting for slavery, okay? There was
No, they
that's
weren't.
like a common misbelief and something very surface level is the idea of, oh yeah, the South was fighting because they wanted to keep slaves, and the North was fighting to free slaves. That's like the little tip of the iceberg. There's so much
Tilted.
underneath that. Where they're fighting for succession, they're fighting for different types of tax rights, they're fighting for
States'
an
rights. Yeah.
independence, states' rights, and nationalistic feeling they believed in, and just a whole lot more than just keeping slaves. And do you guys have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, we were when we were discussing about this, a couple nights ago on our voice chat. It was literally the federal government, the North coming in and disrupting their way of life down in the South, by trying to take away the only economic means they had of keeping their states running. It'd be no different than if if Biden's administration came into Texas and said you couldn't that they couldn't produce whatever crops, or like they couldn't refine their oil. They couldn't refine oil anymore. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it's they're literally trying to, I guess, this maybe kill is strong of a word, but literally trying to kill their economy, trying to kill their states off by doing that. And I kind of I get it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of parallels that are going on with like government overreach that we see now. Obviously, we don't have, well, we do have slavery, but under a different name, different type of slavery. But um, yeah, it's I'm trying to find the words to describe it, but um, like you said, like what we've learned was very surface level, and it's a lot more depth to this topic.
Well, let it be
Exactly.
known as well that in the single digit percentage of people in the South were slave owners.
Yeah,
A
that's right. That's right.
vast
You had to be
majority
wealthy
did
to.
not own any slaves. So
Yep.
it wasn't about slavery, it was about encroachment of a federal government
Yeah, that's
for
what
the
I
Um,
think.
most
That's what a
part.
lot of people. I think that's what a lot of people miss, is that you had to be pretty wealthy. I mean, you had to own land to even have a plantation. You had to have land, vast amount. Just like with big agriculture nowadays, you have to have a lot of money to get started in that kind of industry. And yeah, like you said, multi, it was such a small percentage of the people who actually owned slaves, which were the wealthy elites. That's pretty much what it was. But we have this misconception that every person in the South owned slaves, which wasn't true. And and on that point as well, you also had indentured servitude. You had a lot of whites that were slaves as well, working fields and stuff like that. And it's very unfair to say that every white person was owning slaves and they did this and that. That's just, yeah, very disingenuous argument for sure.
Yeah, and ask the Irish up in New York at that point in the North. And
Hmm.
we won't even go about how the Emancipation Proclamation only applied to the southern states, the way that it was written and the way that he did it. It was to the southern states who had already seceded and formed their own constitution. So
Hmm.
it didn't free any slaves in the North.
Yeah,
So it
and then
wasn't about
there's,
slavery. It was all PR moves.
yeah,
And
and
I
there's
see.
another. Oh, sorry, multi. What
No,
you,
I was like, I see Lady
answer to?
Medea's
mhm.
comment if she wants me to answer it. I found a lot through my dad, who did the first blood test, the DNA test, and then I did my own. So I discovered a lot of it that way. But no, my grandparents didn't talk about it. It was mostly through my dad and chatting with him.
Okay.
And
And
I
is
just
it
wanted to say,
something? Mhm, go ahead.
I just want to say that I kind of learned this in American history when I was going to university. That now this maybe might be a little woke, because it was I did learn this in college, and this was around like 2019, 2018, when I was finishing up my 4 year degree. But they were saying that the definition of what we call white has always changed throughout history. Like, Irish were never, they were not considered white when they first came to America. You know what I mean? It was, I believe, it was like the original British settlers were the ones that were considered white. It wasn't until times changed and then the Irish assimilated, then were considered white. I mean, even with the Italians too. When the Italians came over, they were considered non-white. And then eventually, as people started assimilating into the culture, then the definition of whiteness started changing. But like I said, that might be a little woke. I'm not sure, but I believe there is some truth to that. Just how the definition of that changes or changed. I guess. Yeah.
And Malte, is this something you've talked about with your children or plan to or have had discussions about before?
Um, well, first of all, there's only one that's still alive, but we're not going to talk about that here.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't think they need to know unless they really want to, especially in this day and age. So the reason why I say that they don't need to know is that most people and the newer generations, they kind of take all of that and then judge you based on things that happened hundreds of years ago. And I don't think she needs to deal with that. I mean, I'm very protective of my daughter. So if I can save her from any harm or any bullying or anything like that, it's like she doesn't need to know.
Hmm.
If she
Like
wants to
just says
discover it for herself, that's fine.
everything, not everything's black and white. No pun intended. Uh,
Hey, there's a yellow here.
Yeah, that's right. Shades of yellow. There's shades of yellow in the middle.
much love to everyone here. Much love to you, Laurie.
What's up, Lori?
Uh, heard that before. Heard what?
I think she's talking about the definition of whiteness that changes. That
Oh
has
yeah, the whole
changed throughout
Irish thing.
history. Yeah.
I mean, now pretty much though I feel like now anyone pretty much is considered white almost. I mean, white
If you're
adjacent
not
is
a
basically
communist, if
white
you're not a
now.
communist, you're
Yeah.
considered white.
I can say it like a
Yeah,
thighs. If your thighs aren't pure pale, then you're not white in my books
well,
at least.
nowadays people's political beliefs make them white.
Yeah,
Look at the
that's
Hodge
true.
What is
twins.
that? It's
Yeah.
so convoluted and
Well,
just
what you're saying, Malta, is very funny because there's a thing in a lot of minority communities, whether it's Black, Asian, Hispanic, or whatever, is that if you prescribe it a certain, like, whether it's political or maybe you're articulate, maybe um you read and stuff like that. There's a thing, oh, you acting white, you're so whitewashed. That's what my Asian friends used to say all the time, because I used to listen to like classic rock. I had long hair. I hung out with punk rockers. I did, I mean, like, I did listen to rap music, but it wasn't like my main thing, and they always be like, oh, you're so white, man, you're so whitewashed, you know what I mean? So it's just funny, how anyone could be white just because of whatever you prefer to do. Um, that's not, I guess, like, part of what you're supposed to be. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean,
Well,
your pops, you're Ronan's favorite white guy, so that's pretty cool.
Thank you, Gaming Ronin. Appreciate that.
the self-own that they don't even realize they're doing to themselves is like when you're more educated, when you're more well-spoken. There's
Mhm.
like, man, you acting white. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
so a of an higher intellectual capacity? Is that a bad thing?
Yeah, that's the thing is, and that that really irks me, is like the praising of ignorance. Like, being ignorant is something that you're supposed to strive for because you're a certain skin color. Like, that doesn't make sense to me at all. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, agreed. Now do math.
Yeah, and like Biden said, I mean,
I'm not
if
that
you don't
Asian.
vote for if you don't vote but if you don't vote for Biden, then you're not even white. I mean, then you're not even black. Sorry, you have to be white if you don't vote for Biden. If you don't vote for Biden, then you're not black. Okay, all the blacks need to vote for Biden because he's gonna deliver you fried chicken dinners, just like he did to that one black family where he dethroned the father, put his position aside, took over the head of the table, and made everyone call him sir or massa. But the massa was in the
Massa.
deleted scenes, which they didn't actually show in the finished 1 minute and 11-second video, which by the way took 4 days to film. So
Dude, that
And I,
food looks
and all the
soggy as
little
fuck
kids sat
too.
on his lap too.
Yep. Rubbed his hairs, his
I
leg
don't think
hairs.
I don't think he likes sniffing black hair. I think he's a bit too.
I
He
remember
lived
him
through
saying that.
segregation, I don't think he's into black hair.
Corn Pop was a good dude.
Hey, Jess, you gotta be proud of that. I am, but it's chill. Legacy is very important. Especially like learning about like when I first learned about Maltese legacy, I was like, man, I'm in the presence of someone descended from something, a celebrity almost. Well, not a celebrity, someone of prominence. Someone whose influences fed their way across history, be it negative, be it positive. Influence is influence, and it's someone who's had a very major effect on history, and how even media and stuff has been perceived, and with news and books and everything that has been said and put out about the whole story of Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Yeah, multi. Do you have do you know like how the rivalry between the Hatfields and the McCoys happened? Is there can you give us a quick rundown on that?
I'm pretty sure they were stealing each other's daughters, but don't quote me because I actually don't know. That's a part of, although they're abundant, the McCoys are extremely abundant, especially in the South where I'm from. I never really paid attention to that part of history, so
Okay,
I'd be talking out of turn if I tried to say anything.
okay, okay. Yeah, I mean,
I
I
just know
guess
that's my grandma before she married Sullivan, which is her
okay,
given last name now, but like her what surname I guess. Her maiden name is McCoy, and then McCoy and Hicks. That goes back a long way.
okay. I
So on
just
the whole,
oh,
go ahead.
no,
Mhm.
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. Go. Before we move on to the next subject, finish this up.
Oh, well, I was just I was gonna do a little left turn here. I just wanted to like point out that um throughout like no race or yeah no race no nation has their hands that are clean.
Exactly.
Every race has blood on their hands. Every race enslaved each other. I mean, you know, slavery's been around since biblical times, since the beginning of man. You know, I mean, Asians were essentially all slaves, or they're peasants, unless you're part of the aristocrat class, or you were a nobleman, or if you were, one of the emperors and kings, you're pretty much a slave. You were beholden to whatever, the emperor, whatever he wanted to do. So when people are just saying, oh, white people did this and that. It's like, well, no, I mean, yeah, they did, but like black people did it, Africans did it, Middle Easterns did it, Asians did. Like everyone has blood on their
Indians,
hands.
Indians.
Indians, yep,
Hmm.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. And Jessica, yeah, to your point, the first American slave owner was a free black man, and they also
Mhm.
sold them. They sold their own kind into slavery at the ports over
Hmm.
there on West Africa.
Yep.
So, like, no, what I mean by that is like nobody's clean, or
Nope.
no,
Pure.
no, yeah, everyone at some point, however you want to delineate through folks, at some point in their history, everyone's done wrong.
Hmm.
All of sin and fall short of the glory of God. So it's time to stop judging and start just having conversations like this.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Just as, yep, especially after they conquered the other tribes, they were warriors, they're warring against. Yeah, I mean, that was the way of things, like, back then, that's how you grow yourself, like, even back then, like, with the tribes, growing your tribe, because you need people doing the menial labor, which, and moving forward, like, cotton picking and stuff, it's not ideal, like, no one wants to work the cotton fields, right? But that was very much so a way to get rich, to gain even a level of, fame, as we know with Malty's ancestor, a way to gain prominence, and a way to just, it was a career, it was, um way to it was a whole business, an enterprise, buying slaves, breeding slaves, having them work fields, not just cotton fields. There are tons of different types of plantations, and plantations were an investment, like stocks. Like, you invest this money in the plantation, invest this money in the slaves, you get your return, you buy more slaves, you sell slaves. It was obviously a whole industry, and a very complex one too, that a lot of stuff went into. And as we've said, it was not just, white people doing this. This was not just an America thing, or not even just like a North America, southern region of North America thing. This was across the world. Slavery has been a thing in every country that there was. Like, before we went over to Africa, Africans, they was enslaving themselves. It's not a new concept by any means, because America was only founded in 17 something, 1750 something. I'm dumb. I don't know.
It was like, well, yeah. I mean, it's like
America's
yeah,
only
like
been around for like 300 years, okay? Slavery's been
less than.
around a lot longer than 300 years. Okay, look at Egypt, look at the pyramids and stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, but I feel like, unfortunately, which it just feels so dumb to say, and I hate having to say this, I feel like there's a lot of people, if you ask them who invented slavery, the settlers, I feel like they might say that. Those videos where people like go to colleges or whatever. Like, I could go to a college and ask some dumb blonde who invented slavery, and
Yeah.
there's a 50-50 chance she's gonna say the settlers, which just
Yeah,
sucks. It's
or
something that needs to
she'll
be.
think she's really smart and say Christopher Columbus.
Oh well, Galen,
You'll
on
hear that
top,
a lot.
1776.
yeah. And to piggyback on what you were saying, it was actually the white man that first ended slavery. The British were the first ones back in England to outlaw slavery in their country, and it spread over. And I don't think people appreciate that. I don't think they realize that there was actually, and then the abolitionists were mainly a lot of white people that were doing that. You know what I mean? And
And
then
look at
also,
Brazil right now, like Brazil and Africa, and the stuff happening like the
mm,
Middle East, and like the stuff happening in like the more like Japan and China is a lot more like almost covered up. Whereas like in
yeah,
Brazil and Africa, there's like completely open slavery happening. At
yeah.
least in like Japan and China, it's being like, oh yeah, it's factories, there's it's
Oh
paperwork
yeah, so,
involved.
yeah,
It's not, but like
children.
in Brazil
Yeah, I
right now,
mean,
there's
yeah,
actual. You can look up this like actual full-on slavery. It's yeah, we've got slaves,
okay,
and you can come try and take them away from us, but we're gonna fight you on that.
yeah. I mean, we still have slavery here. It's called human trafficking. There's
Mhm.
people that are that come in. Well, mainly to the southern border right now, and pretty much you have to work off their debt, working in factories and whatnot. Working the fields. I mean, yeah, working the fields. Picking
Mhm.
fruits and
Cotton.
vegetables and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, yeah. But then,
Maybe.
and there's another interesting thing too is that by the time of the Civil War, before that, slavery was already kind of going to the wayside once
Ending.
industrialization happened, because once like machines were being made to that that took over the human labor side of those industries, it was already starting to go away at that point.
And at that point, it was very, listen, during the Civil War, it was very dangerous to be a free slave, especially like in the South. A lot of them, like with the new regulations, like when America was like split during that, the borders like between them, it was a lot safer and a lot preferable to be working as a slave and have a place you've got a home, you've got food, versus being out alone with no home in this
Mm,
war-torn area where you're either going to be killed or drafted to fight in one side or the other.
Well, they
And
let you marry and have kids too. So a lot of them had families, and they had their own
exactly.
separate huts on the
mm,
plantations. If you, except for a very few amount of instances, which obviously one that I'm from, most of the plantations were extremely nice. They gave their own families their own huts, their own little like places to live, and they were well
and
taken care of because I mean, how much do you want to put wear and tear on your car that you rely on to get you to and from work every day and to do all the other things you want to do?
exactly, it's
It's
like an
just
investment
it's
pretty
a
much.
yeah. Yeah, that's basically what it was. And then there's the bad ones, which we always hear about the bad ones. We 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 hear about like bad cops.
Oh, yep, yep.
Out of all the cops that are employed just in America, we always hear about the bad ones. We don't hear about the exponentially more that are doing good deeds just for the heck of doing it, or just because
Mm.
that's in the line of duty. You always hear about the bad ones.
I mean, look how famous Uncle Tom's Cabin is. We don't have an Uncle Larry's cabin. Uncle Larry was this kindly old guy who like taught them how to read. That's not talked about. Because like there could be an Uncle Larry out there who did teach little black girls how to read. But
Yeah.
that's
And,
not the type of thing that we need to talk
and,
have right now. That's not what Biden wants to spread right now.
and let's also not forget that after the Civil War happened, and well, the impact. Oh God, the impact. So the freeing of the slaves, it took a long time for it to spread, right? I believe what it's like the like Texas. There's like a part of Texas that was like the last place where like the last slaves actually heard about the emancipation of the slavery. But a lot of the slaves that were freed at that point, I believe a lot of them decided to stay the
Mm-hmm.
the plantation owners,
The masses.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that's where we got sharecropping from. Now, we can argue that we could, debate on whether, sharecropping was another form of slavery. Sure, we could, definitely argue that, but they a lot of them decided to stay because they really had nowhere else to go at that point. You know what I mean? So it's
Especially like,
and
do
I'm
you want to be safe? You want to have a home? You want to have
yeah.
food? Or do you want to
I,
be out and homeless in the middle of a war?
yeah,
I
it's
think
and I'm not. let me just finish. Let me just finish my point. Is and I'm not saying like oh they should just kept on being slaves, but the freeing of the slaves did um bring up another set of problems after that. So it's not just like oh the slaves were freed and everything was all hunky dory and great. It's like no, it there was another
Who's working the fields
set of
now?
issues that like came up.
Shortages,
It's like yeah, and then like it's like would it be better for them to just been kicked out and just they had nothing to do and couldn't find work, or they was it better for them to stay and maybe at least have a house and some sort of way to have a little bit of income or something. So
and that's similar to the problem we've got now with like homeless people and illegal immigrants coming in. And our homeless rates have just been skyrocketing up and up and up and up. And I mean that of course that was not even close to a problem then. There was still, food shortages and production shortages during that time because no one's working the fields. We've got a lot of similar things happening now with that, with immigrants coming in and just not working. And when you've just got like I was in Atlanta in on November, and homeless people just everywhere, every side of the street, the sidewalks are packed, and they've got nothing to do, they've got no motivation to do anything. And it's just very unfortunate where we're heading with that.
So, yo, pops, this might be a hot button take, but I feel like so when the slaves got freed and we went to the sharecropping thing, it
mhm.
went from a parasitic relationship to a symbiotic relationship because the whole economy had changed and like yes, you now have an employer who pays you, but then you pay for all your little foods and your wants and
Your
needs and
equipment and all
everything, but you
that,
have a
yeah,
place to do. So then it became like a small step to get into society, which I
yeah,
think is better than just kicking them out on their asses.
yeah. I
So
agree. I agree. And yeah,
it,
sorry.
yeah, no, yeah, that's basically where I'm going. It's like it's a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. Was it perfect? Hell no, but it was closer to making them feel like contributing members of society, which I think is a
Yeah.
good thing.
And let's not forget, years after, after the Civil War and all that, you had people that worked for companies, whether they're factories or whatever, where they actually lived, in a like the what was it like the company store, if you ever heard that term, where the employees would um, they would pretty much live on a like an encampment or whatever that was provided by these factories and companies, and they had to use their money. They can only use their money at that company store, so it's it's almost like, and it kind of gets to the point. It's like it's almost like slavery really never went away. It just changed names, just kind of changed, in certain ways. It wasn't now that back then you get captured and you became a slave. It's like now, in order to just survive, you have to go work for somebody, an employer, and then that employer would, oh well, you could come live at the company
Plantation.
house, and then you could buy all the stuff at the company store, and even now, I mean,
Look what
like
Disney's
we're
doing
all
that
white
right now.
slaves essentially. I mean, I mean, if you think about it, like we're all wage slaves. Like, yeah, sure, we get paid, we get money and all that, but we are kind of beholden to our jobs in a way, you know. I mean,
Disney
Subjugation
has a
by any
obviously,
new
other name should sound as sweet.
yeah. I mean,
the
obviously,
Disney
it's a lot
resorts
better
in
than
It really is.
Orlando. They've got
but
these new policies where if you're a foreigner, if you want to come have an internship in Disney, instead of paying you, what they do is you come and you get to stay at the Disney
mm,
corporation like apartments, and you get to eat the
yeah,
Disney food, but you don't get paid. You get paid very, very close to nothing.
yeah,
And I mean, obviously that's preferable for some people. But just as we've said before, especially in other countries, which really not in America that much. Like that's the closest thing we have in America to that officially. Obviously there's trading and stuff happening that's illegal, but in other countries there's just open slavery happening, and that's not something that's ever discussed or ever like taught or mentioned. And history is such an important thing, and I feel like now it is not given the relevance that it needs to be because we can learn so much about history and about how history repeats and take what's happened in the past to stuff that's happening now and be able to form our opinions about that. But when you're teaching one-sided history, where you don't explain both sides or you don't show one aspect and twist it, then you've got people who just don't have the capability or understanding to understand that America actually isn't the worst place ever, okay? And America wasn't the first place to have slaves, and America will not be the last place to have slaves, okay?
True, very true.
One of the first civilizations to completely abolish it.
Yep.
Exactly.
Fought a war for it. People died, on both sides. And
Hmm.
and then I just want to bring up a point. In the Civil War, there were plenty of black people that, fought for the Confederacy as well. So,
And
let's not forget that.
yeah, and also, well, there was a stipend provided to some slaves that if they fought like a year in the war, they'd be granted their freedom. Some of
Hmm.
them fought because they actually volunteered to fight
Yeah,
for the
Some of them
South.
believed in the other
that's right.
beliefs, which what I said earlier. It's not just about freeing the slaves or keeping slaves. Some of them believed in the fundamental beliefs of the Confederacy. Okay, and there's
Yeah.
a lot more to it than is taught.
Yeah, well, Ulysses S. Grant later became our president of the United States, but like he was the general that took down Robert E. Lee at the Battle of Appomattox in Virginia. He said in an interview, if this war was about slavery, I chose the wrong side. It
Hmm.
wasn't about
Hmm.
slavery. It was, history is written by the victors, and that's the way that they framed it. But that's not exactly what it was all about at all.
Yeah, and Lincoln also said that too. If he could, what was it? Keep the Union united without freeing the slaves, he would have done that too. So.
Yep.
All right, folks. Well, we've gone into a lot of historical topics, and if you want us to do another stream like this, another 199 history stream, definitely let us know because it's a topic that's always fascinated me, and I was shocked when I learned about Maltese heritage, and it's something that I'd love to go more in depth into and just cover different time periods. So if this was fun for you or interesting, and I'll definitely let us know, and we might do another episode. But I'm going to ask you, both of our guests, if they have any closing remarks about this or opinions on what we've discussed. Let's go with your pops first.
Never just, take whatever you learn at face value. Always do your own research. Always, do a deep dive and understand that the world is not black or white. It's many shades of gray. Um, and like I said earlier, no one's hands are clean in this topic. Everyone has blood on their hands, but it's about how we progressed and what we do in the future is what matters.
Exactly. Well said. Multi.
Yeah, I would just say learning about your heritage and your history. Hey, that's all fun. It's all good. It's good to know your history so you don't repeat it, whether it's good or bad. Like, learn from it and don't treat other people based on not only the color of their skin, but like who they come from. Everyone's an individual. I'm going to bring my Christianity back up, but like everyone is a child in the eyes of God and a child of God. So treat them on based on their own merit, not from a bunch of crap that they have no control over.
That's
Hmm.
right. That's right.
All right, folks. We've got episode 4 of the 199 podcast this Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. This Friday, 8 p.m., we've got an interview with Frederick Agrell. So that's going to be exciting. Here's some people from Asia's opinions on some stuff. Give your pops some more representation and companionism. But yeah, guys, if you like this episode, then definitely comment on the video and let us know if you want us to do another one. Because again, it's a fascinating topic, and it's a topic that is not discussed or elaborated on at all as much as it should be. History is, obviously quite important. But for now, I'm going to say farewell and sub to the channel, please. Let's hit 100 subs before the next podcast. That'd be so cool. And we'll talk to you guys later. See
Hit
ya.
that like button, guys. Hit that like button.